The rain drummed against the cracked window pane of Alyssa Monroe's small apartment, each drop keeping time with the pounding of her heart. Her phone glowed in her trembling hands. Its light, the only thing fighting the shadows that clung to her living room like ghosts that refused to leave. She sat cross-legged on her faded couch, surrounded by unpaid bills and the faint scent of baby powder that still lingered in the air. In the next room, her 4-year-old daughter, Nia, finally slept after 3 feverish nights. The rhythmic sound of her breathing was Alyssa's only anchor. She reread the message she'd just typed, her thumb hovering over the blue send button. Alyssa, Marcus, please, I need that money tonight. Nia's meds are expensive and the rent's due tomorrow. You promised. Marcus, her ex-boyfriend, had a talent for disappearing whenever life demanded something from him. He hadn't paid child support in months, but he'd bragged during their last argument about a big job for a man named Castellano. Alyssa hadn't cared then. Now desperation made her reckless. She hit send. Seconds passed, then minutes. No response. Her frustration grew. She typed again, anger edging her words. Alyssa, don't play with me, Marcus. I know you got paid from that Castelli job. Don't make me call your boss myself. The message flew into the void. She exhaled shakily, her mind fogged with exhaustion. Somewhere, the radiator hissed in protest against the October chill, filling the silence with its lonely clatter. She whispered, "Just one break, please," as she leaned back and rubbed her temples. Her life had become a series of near misses. Rent due, power almost cut off, pharmacy bills stacking higher than her paychecks. Her eyelids had just begun to droop when her phone buzzed. One new message. Unknown number. Who is this? Alyssa frowned. Not Marcus's number. Maybe he'd changed phones again. He did that a lot. She thumbed a quick reply. Alyssa. Sorry, wrong person. She was about to toss the phone aside when it buzzed again. Unknown number. What Castelli job? Her stomach tightened. That name again. Castelli. It wasn't common. Something about it clawed at the back of her mind. She should have ignored it. Should have deleted the thread and gone to check on Nia. But exhaustion and frustration clouded her judgment. Alyssa. My ex mentioned the name once. Sorry for the confusion. The response came immediately. Unknown number. Your name. Her skin prickled. The tone was sharp. Commanding. An order, not a question. She set the phone face down on the coffee table, heart thudding. Who was this? One of Marcus's contacts? Someone dangerous? Another buzz. Unknown number. Address. Alyssa's mouth went dry. She didn't respond. Her heart began to hammer. Then, one final message appeared. Unknown number. Alyssa Monroe. 1912, West Edge Apartments, Unit 2B. She froze. Her throat constricted as her own name and address glared back at her in that cold, glowing font. And then, the message that nearly made her scream. Unknown. Number. Your daughter's fever broke. That's good. The phone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering to the floor. She stared at it, breath shallow and uneven. No one outside this apartment knew about Nia's illness. How could they possibly know? Her pulse surged, cold and sharp. She lunged toward the window, pulling back the blinds just enough to peek outside. The street below was slick with rain, puddles reflecting the weak glow of streetlights. Empty. Then, headlights. A black SUV rolled to a stop in front of her building. Engine running, headlights off. A second vehicle appeared behind it, then a third. Within moments, 5 black cars lined the block, idling like silent beasts waiting for a signal. Her phone buzzed again, and this time she couldn't bring herself to touch it. The sound vibrated through her chest like an alarm clock for a nightmare. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark window. Eyes wide, jaw trembling. She looked like a stranger trapped in her own fear. A knock came at the door. Soft. Controlled. The kind of knock that didn't ask. It informed. Alyssa Monroe, a man's voice called, smooth and steady. We're not here to hurt you, but we need to talk about Marcus Henderson. Her stomach dropped. How did he know Marcus's full name? The voice came again, lower this time. You mentioned the Castelli job. I'm Alessandro Castelli. Open the door. The air seemed to leave the room. The name echoed through her like a warning siren. Her desperate text, The one she'd meant for Marcus hadn't gone to her ex. It had gone to the Mafia boss himself. Alyssa's mind spun. Her trembling fingers brushed the chain lock. If she ran, where would she go? If she stayed silent, would he break the door down? Her heart whispered what her mind refused to say. You're already caught. The rain outside swelled into a steady roar, masking the faint click as she unhooked the chain. When she turned the deadbolt, her reflection stared back one last time, terrified but resolute. The door creaked open, and there he was, tall, cold, beautiful in a dangerous, deliberate way. His suit was dark, his eyes darker still, icy gray that pinned her in place. Behind him stood two men, shadows with faces. "Ms. Monroe," he said, his voice low and smooth, a contradiction of threat and curiosity. "You've made a very interesting mistake." For a heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. Every part of her screamed to shut the door, but something, instinct, fate, maybe foolish courage, kept her still. Some mistakes destroy you, others change everything. And as she stared up into those unyielding gray eyes, Alyssa couldn't tell which kind this one would be. Sometimes life doesn't break in loud moments. It cracks open in silence. One text, one wrong number, and suddenly you're standing at a door that will rewrite your entire story. If that door were yours, would you open it? The hallway light flickered above him, cutting across the sharp planes of his face. Alessandro Castelli stood tall, composed, unreadable, like the kind of man who didn't knock on doors so much as command them to open. Behind him, two other men waited, silent, motionless, rain still dripping from their coats. Alyssa's grip on the door tightened until her knuckles whitened. The air between them seemed charged, humming with danger and disbelief. "Ms. Monroe," he said again, his voice a dark velvet that slid beneath her skin. "You mentioned a name that doesn't belong in your world. Now I need to know why." Alyssa swallowed hard. "It was a mistake," she managed. "I was texting my ex. I thought he—" "Marcus Henderson," Alessandro interrupted smoothly, his tone flat. "Yes, he worked for me." Her breath caught. "Worked?" He tilted his head slightly, gray eyes assessing her like a riddle he couldn't yet solve. "Until he stole from me." The words hung heavy between them. The sound of rain filled the silence. "I don't know anything about that," Alyssa whispered. "I swear. I just needed him to send money for—" "Your daughter," he finished for her. "Nia." A chill ran down her spine. He said her child's name so softly, so deliberately, it felt like a threat dressed as sympathy. Her arms instinctively wrapped around herself. "If you came here to scare me, congratulations, it's working. Now please, just go." For a moment he said nothing. Then, almost gently, "If I wanted to scare you, Ms. Monroe, you'd already know it." One of the men behind him shifted, and Alyssa flinched at the sound of leather brushing fabric. Alessandro noticed. "Stay here," he murmured to his men without turning. They obeyed instantly, retreating a few steps down the hall. Then his gaze returned to her, sharp as glass. "I don't hurt women or children. I'm here because your ex-boyfriend made a mistake, and because you, unintentionally, made another." She didn't move, didn't blink. "Then what do you want from me?" "To make sure Marcus Henderson doesn't get you killed." The words landed like stones in her chest. He stepped closer, close enough that she caught the faint scent of cedar and smoke on his suit, the warmth of his body radiating against the cold air sneaking through her cracked window. "You have something that belongs to him," he said quietly. "And that means you now have something that belongs to me." Alyssa blinked, confused. "What are you talking about? I don't have anything." "Your text said otherwise," he replied. "You threatened to call the Castelli people. A bold move, considering Marcus told me you didn't even know my name." Her breath hitched. I was desperate. I didn't think—" "No," Alessandro said softly. "You didn't. And now, here we are." He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. Every word was deliberate, heavy with the weight of someone used to being obeyed. Behind her, the apartment suddenly felt too small. The walls too thin. The baby monitor on the table flickered faintly, its soft static a reminder that Nia was asleep. Safe, for now. I don't know anything about Marcus's job, Alyssa insisted. We broke up months ago. He doesn't tell me where he works. He barely calls. Yet you texted me like you knew exactly who I was. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely think. It was a bluff, she admitted. He owed me money. I thought maybe, if I said your name, he'd take me seriously. A slow, cold smile curved at the corner of his mouth. And you thought my name was Leverage. Her stomach twisted. Please, I didn't mean... Meaning doesn't change consequence, Alessandro said. But intention? He studied her face. Intention can sometimes save a life. His tone softened slightly, the edges of command rounding into curiosity. How old is your daughter? 4. And you raise her alone? Alyssa nodded cautiously. He exhaled, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Then, without warning, he turned and gestured toward the hallway. Get her coat, he said. What? You're not safe here anymore, her pulse spiked. I'm not going anywhere with you. Marcus has enemies, Alessandro said, his voice firm but quiet. When he stole from me, he didn't just take money. He took information. Information others would kill for. And since you texted me using his name, those others might come for you next. That's insane, she snapped. You can't just... Would you rather wait here and find out if I'm lying? Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted to the window, the black SUV still idling in the rain. For one long moment she stood frozen. Every instinct screamed that this man was danger in human form. But the other truth, the one that had ruled her life for years, was louder. She had no one else to turn to. If she stayed, she risked being found by people worse than him. If she left, at least her daughter might live to see another day. Alyssa's voice came out a whisper. If I go with you, Nia comes too. Alessandro's expression didn't change. Of course. I need to pack her medicine. You have 5 minutes, he said, checking his watch. Anton will help you. Anton? He nodded toward the nearest guard. The man was built like a wall, expression blank. No, Alyssa said sharply. I'll do it myself. For the first time, Alessandro's mouth curved into something that almost resembled respect. Good, he said. You don't trust easily. Keep it that way. She slammed the door, locking it once more. Her shaking hands fumbled with the zipper of a duffel bag as she threw in clothes, medicine, and Naya's stuffed rabbit. In the soft lavender light of her daughter's nightlight, Nia stirred. Mommy? She mumbled sleepily. Alyssa crouched beside her. It's okay, baby. We're just going on a little trip. Nia rubbed her eyes. Like a vacation? Something like that, Alyssa whispered, forcing a smile she didn't feel. She brushed a kiss across her daughter's forehead and whispered, I'll keep you safe no matter what. When she looked up again, her reflection in the window caught her off guard. Haunted eyes, messy curls, exhaustion etched into her face. But beneath it all, a flicker of something fiercer. Resolve. Maybe this was how survival started. Not with power, but with the refusal to let fear make your choices for you. And somewhere deep down, a question echoed. The kind that stays with you long after the night ends. When everything safe in your world collapses, how far would you go to protect the one person who still believes you can keep them safe? Alyssa didn't have an answer, but she was about to find out. The night outside had gone deathly still. Even the rain had quieted, as if the city itself was holding its breath for what came next. Alyssa zipped the duffel shut, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her entire life, her daughter's life, was packed into one small bag. Medicine, pajamas, the stuffed rabbit with a torn ear. Nia's sleepy eyes blinked up at her as she helped her into a coat 2 sizes too big. Mommy, why are we going out? It's dark. Alyssa smoothed her daughter's curls with trembling hands. We just need to go somewhere safe. Baby. Safe from what? She hesitated, glancing toward the door. From people who don't know us. That's all. Nia nodded trustingly, the way only children do. She clutched the rabbit to her chest. Will Daddy be there? The question sliced through her like a blade. No, she said softly. Not this time. A sharp knock interrupted them. Controlled, measured. Alyssa took a steadying breath and opened the door. Alessandro stood there, calm as ever, flanked by the same guard, Anton, whose presence filled the narrow hallway like a wall of shadow. "Are you ready?" he asked, her chin lifted, "as I'll ever be." His eyes flicked briefly to Nia, who clung to Alyssa's leg. Something unreadable crossed his expression. Curiosity, maybe even respect. "She'll ride with you," he said, then motioned for Anton to take the duffel. "I'll hold it," Alyssa interjected quickly. Alessandro's brow arched slightly, but he didn't argue. "Fine, stay close to me. Don't speak to anyone outside this hallway." As they descended the dim stairwell, Nia's small hand clutched Alyssa's tightly. The building's flickering light cast long, shifting shadows on the peeling walls. Every creak of the steps, every echo of their footsteps felt amplified in the silence. When they reached the ground floor, the air changed, thicker, colder, heavy with the smell of wet asphalt and idling engines. The black SUVs still lined the street, forming an intimidating line of sleek metal. One driver stepped forward and opened the rear door as if rehearsed. Nia hesitated, shrinking behind her mother. "Mommy, I don't want to go in there," she whispered. Alyssa knelt and looked her in the eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just for a little while. We're going somewhere warm, remember?" Nia's lip trembled. "I want my bed." Alyssa's throat tightened. "I know, baby. Me too." Alessandro's voice came quietly from behind her. "She'll be safe with me, Ms. Monroe." Alyssa looked up at him, skeptical. That's what people always say right before they take everything. Something flickered across his features. Pain, maybe, or understanding. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He held her gaze for a long moment, then said, "Get in the car." The interior smelled of leather and faint cologne. Expensive, controlled, masculine. Nia sat on Alyssa's lap, wide-eyed, her gaze darting from the tinted windows to the men outside. The door shut with a solid, heavy thud. The convoy rolled into motion. City lights blurred past in streaks of gold and red. Alyssa's reflection shimmered faintly on the glass, eyes hollow, posture rigid. The silence between her and Alessandro was thick enough to taste. Finally, she spoke. "Where are you taking us?" He didn't look at her when he answered. "Somewhere safer than where you were." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight." She clenched her jaw. "You talk like a man who never has to explain himself." "I don't," he replied simply. A humorless laugh escaped her. "Of course you don't." Nia shifted in her lap, drowsy again. Alyssa wrapped her arms around her daughter protectively. "If this is some kind of trap, if you hurt her..." He turned then, his gaze locking onto hers. "If I wanted to hurt you or your child, I wouldn't need to bring a car." The words were quiet, but they hit like a hammer. Alyssa looked away first. The drive stretched on through unfamiliar streets, the city thinning into quiet suburbs, then into the kind of neighborhood where the houses didn't just sit behind fences, they sat behind walls. Finally, the convoy slowed at an iron gate that opened silently on approach. Beyond it, a long driveway curved through manicured lawns to a massive stone house that glowed softly in the rain. The SUV stopped beneath an archway. The driver stepped out, opening the door for Alessandro first. He exited smoothly, composed, then turned to offer a hand to Alyssa. She ignored it and climbed out with Nia in her arms. The rain had lightened to a mist, cool against her skin. The air smelled faintly of cedar and the ocean, though she knew they were still miles inland. A woman in her 60s appeared in the doorway, elegant but severe. "Everything is prepared, signore," she said in a lightly accented voice. "Thank you, Rosa," Alessandro replied, then gestured toward Alyssa and Nia. "They'll stay in the East Wing. Make sure the child has what she needs." Alyssa stiffened. "You act like we're checking into a hotel." He looked at her evenly. "Would you prefer a safe house in the city, with bulletproof windows and no heat?" She said nothing. Rosa extended a hand. "This way, please." Alyssa followed reluctantly, her boots squeaking against the marble floor. The house was beautiful in a cold, deliberate way. Modern art on the walls, soft lighting, echoes swallowed by thick carpets. Rosa led them up a wide staircase to a set of double doors. Inside was a suite larger than Alyssa's entire apartment. 2 bedrooms, a sitting area, and a window overlooking a rain-soaked garden. Alyssa stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "This is temporary," Alessandro said behind her. "Until we deal with Marcus?" She turned, clutching Nia closer. "What does that mean? Deal with him?" "It means I find what he stole before someone else does. And if he doesn't have it, he does." His tone left no room for doubt. Alyssa's pulse quickened. "And you think I can help you?" "I think you already have," he said, eyes steady on hers. "He'll come for you. He won't be able to resist." Alyssa froze. "Come for me?" "For her," Alessandro said quietly, nodding to Nia. "She's the only thing he still cares about." Something cold crawled down her spine. "You're using us as bait." "I'm protecting you," he corrected, "from the men who would use you first." His voice had gone softer, but it didn't soothe her. It chilled her more. Alyssa's lips parted to argue, but then she looked down at Nia, who had fallen asleep in her arms, trusting that her mother would keep her safe. And just like that, the fight drained out of her. She whispered, "You better be right about that, Alessandro." He inclined his head slightly. "I usually am." Then he turned and left, the door closing behind him with a quiet finality that made her realize she wasn't just a guest. She was a captive of her own mistake. Yet as she laid Nia down and pulled the blanket over her, another thought whispered beneath the fear. Maybe, just maybe, this mistake had put her exactly where she was meant to be. Sometimes danger doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to strip away everything false until all that's left is the truth you've been running from. If you had to walk into danger to keep your child safe, would you still do it? Knowing you might never come back? Alyssa sat on the edge of the bed, the question echoing through her mind as the rain outside whispered against the glass, like a warning she could no longer afford to ignore. The morning light slipped through gauzy curtains, pale and unfamiliar. For the first time in days there was no dripping faucet, no distant siren, only the hush of moneyed quiet. Alyssa blinked awake on sheets softer than anything she owned. For a heartbeat she forgot where she was. Then the memory returned in pieces. The black cars, the knock, the man with storm-gray eyes. Nia was still asleep beside her. One hand tangled in the ear of her stuffed rabbit. Alyssa touched the child's curls and whispered, "We're okay." The lie tasted easier in daylight. A knock came, polite, deliberate. A woman's voice followed. "Breakfast, Signora." Alyssa hesitated, then cracked the door. The older woman from last night, Rosa, entered with a tray, fruit, croissants, a small pot of cocoa. The aroma of butter and chocolate filled the room. "For the little one," Rosa said. "She needs strength." "She needs to go home," Alyssa replied. Rosa's dark eyes softened. "Then you must do what Mr. Castelli asks. It will be quicker that way." Before Alyssa could answer, the doorbell downstairs chimed. Footsteps, firm, confident, moved through the halls. Rosa gave a slight nod. "He will want to see you now." Alyssa's pulse quickened. "He's back? Mr. Castelli is never gone, Cara. Only unseen." The study looked like something from a museum. Walnut shelves, heavy curtains, the faint smell of tobacco and rain-damp earth. Alessandro stood near a window, phone pressed to his ear, voice low in Italian. When he saw her, he ended the call. "You slept?" "As much as people sleep after they've been kidnapped." His mouth twitched. "Protection, not kidnapping." She crossed her arms. "Depends on who you ask." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then he moved to the desk and slid a thin folder toward her. Marcus left this behind. Inside were photographs. Grainy, long-lens shots of men in suits, warehouses, license plates, and tucked among them, photos of her and Nia, at the park, outside preschool, in their apartment courtyard. Alyssa's stomach dropped. "He was watching us." "Yes. Why?" "Because he planned to use you." Alessandro's tone held no accusation, only cold fact. "The information he stole, records of shipments, names, belongs to people who kill for less. He thought if he had you and the child, I would hesitate." Alyssa looked up sharply. "Would you?" He met her gaze. "Yes." The honesty startled her. "Why tell me that?" "Because I don't lie when the truth is more useful." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Do you know where he might run?" "No." she said, voice breaking. I stopped knowing that man a long time ago. Alessandro nodded once, as if confirming something. Then we find another way. By afternoon, the house had settled into a rhythm of controlled calm. Nia colored at a table in the corner of the sitting room, humming softly. Alyssa watched from the window, phone clutched in her hand. It was new, untraceable, Alessandro said, but still she hesitated to use it. When Rosa entered with fresh linens, Alyssa asked, How long have you worked for him? Long enough to know he keeps his promises, Rosa replied. What kind of promises? The dangerous kind, the kind that keep people alive. Outside, the garden shimmered with recent rain. Beyond the hedges, a tall wall circled the property, its edges crowned with discreet security wire. The sight should have comforted her. Instead, it felt like a cage. Alyssa turned from the window. He said Marcus stole information. What kind? Rosa hesitated, folding a towel with perfect precision. Information about shipments. Alliances. Things that keep balance between men who prefer chaos. Mafia business. Rosa's hands paused. We don't use that word here. That evening, Alessandro returned wearing a dark sweater instead of a suit, sleeves pushed to his forearms. The change made him look almost ordinary. Almost. He found Alyssa in the sitting room, trying to coax Nia into eating dinner. Dr. Maroff will come again tomorrow, he said, glancing at the untouched soup. She should regain strength soon. Alyssa didn't look up. You always sound like you're managing a project. Habit. I'm not your project. No, he agreed quietly. You're the consequence of someone else's choices. She lifted her eyes then, something fierce behind them. Maybe, but I'm also someone's mother, and if you use my daughter to catch him, I swear. He cut her off gently. If I wanted bait, I'd use something less precious. The words landed softer than they should have. She didn't want them to comfort her, but they did. Alessandro gestured toward the garden doors. Walk with me. She hesitated, then followed him outside. The air was cool, scented with wet stone and jasmine. They strolled beneath string lights that glowed like captured stars. Your ex was clever enough to steal from me, he said. That means he's also clever enough to know you're here. He'll reach out soon. And if he doesn't, then he's already dead. Alyssa stopped walking. You say that like it's nothing. He turned toward her, eyes unreadable. In my world, death isn't dramatic. It's efficient. Maybe that's the problem with your world. A faint smile ghosted his lips. Maybe that's why I brought you into it. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means you remind me what normal used to feel like. For a long moment, neither spoke. Somewhere in the garden, a fountain whispered. Why tell me that? She finally asked. Because sometimes the truth is more dangerous than silence. He stepped closer then, the space between them shrinking until she could see the flecks of silver in his eyes. Her heartbeat quickened, traitorous and confused. He said softly, Go inside, Alyssa. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we set the trap. As she turned to leave, he added, And lock your door tonight. Not because of me, because of everyone else. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the guards make silent rounds below. Her phone vibrated once, a single notification from an unknown number. Marcus. Sophie, you there? Her breath hitched. He used the wrong name. A test. She typed back carefully. Alyssa, who is this? Marcus, it's me. I know you're with him. You and the kid need to leave now. He's not what he seems. Her fingers trembled above the keys. She glanced at Nia, sleeping, safe, oblivious, and then at the closed door, where Alessandro's voice had last echoed. She typed only one word. Why? The reply came fast. Marcus, because the people he crossed don't stop at threats. And when they come for him, they'll take you too. Alyssa's blood ran cold. Marcus, if you still trust me, meet me tomorrow night. Same coffee shop on Riverside. I'll explain everything. Her thumb hovered over the phone. Her reflection in the dark glass looked back at her. A woman trapped between two evils, unsure which would devour her slower. She whispered, What have you done? Marcus? Sometimes the hardest part of surviving isn't escaping the danger, It's deciding who to believe when both choices could ruin you. If you were Alyssa, would you risk everything to trust the man who broke your heart, or stay with the one whose power could destroy it? The message glowed on the screen long after Alyssa stopped reading it. Marcus's warning, his sudden concern, felt wrong. It was too late for him to play the hero. Downstairs, a clock chimed 3 soft notes. Naya shifted in her sleep, murmuring something about pancakes, and the sound steadied Alyssa just enough to think. If Marcus knew she was here, then someone inside the Castelli circle was feeding him information, which meant she and Nia weren't just guests. They were leverage on both sides. She slipped out of bed and padded to the sitting room. The house was quiet except for the faint buzz of security lights outside. Alyssa scrolled through the phone's settings, encrypted, no contacts, no traceable history. Alessandro had planned for secrecy, yet Marcus had found her anyway. The door clicked behind her. She spun around, the phone clutched tight. Alessandro stood in the doorway barefoot, shirt untucked, the sharp edges of authority softened by exhaustion. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "I could ask you the same." He nodded toward the phone. "You've been contacted." She stiffened. "How do you—" "I installed a monitor. Standard protection." "Protection," she repeated. "You mean surveillance." He walked closer, hand out. "May I?" Alyssa hesitated, then passed him the device. His eyes flicked across the screen, reading quickly. "Riverside Coffee," he murmured. "He's baiting you. Or warning me. Men like Marcus don't warn. They manipulate. And men like you don't?" For a moment their gazes locked. His calm, hers defiant. Then Alessandro exhaled slowly, the tension draining from his posture. "I manipulate to protect. He manipulates to survive. There's a difference." Alyssa sank onto the sofa, head in her hands. "I don't know who to believe anymore." He placed the phone on the table. "Then believe what you can see. Your daughter is safe here. That's real." She looked up. "For how long?" "As long as I'm alive." The quiet certainty in his voice sent a ripple through her chest. Fear, admiration, something she didn't have the energy to name. The next morning, the estate moved with subdued urgency. Guards rotated positions more frequently. Cars came and went through the gates. Rosa whispered that the Russians were making inquiries downtown. Alyssa tried to keep Nia's world small, drawing, breakfast, a short walk in the garden, but unease pressed at every edge of calm. By midday, Alessandro appeared in the doorway. "We're going to test Marcus's message." "How?" "I'll send someone to the cafe. If he shows, we watch. If he doesn't, we wait. And if he brings company, then we end it." Nia's laughter drifted from the other room. Alyssa folded her arms tightly. "Don't tell me what that means." "I won't," he said. Then softer. "You shouldn't have to carry that." The simplicity of it, the small mercy in his voice, broke through her defenses more than threats ever could. That evening, the air turned heavy with approaching rain. Alyssa couldn't stop pacing. Every sound from the hall made her jump. When Rosa finally entered with news, her voice was quiet. They saw him, alone, waiting. Alyssa's stomach twisted. "And now? Mr. Castelli will speak with him." "No." The word shot from her before she could stop it. "He'll kill him." Rosa's gaze didn't waver. "Then he should have thought of that before stealing." Alyssa was already moving, heart pounding as she flew down the stairs. 2 guards turned sharply, blocking her path. "Move!" she snapped. They hesitated. Then Alessandro's voice came from behind them. "Let her through." He stood at the base of the staircase, raincoat half-buttoned, expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be down here." "You can't just decide who lives or dies." "That's exactly what I do," he said evenly. "Then let me come with you." He blinked, clearly not expecting that. "To what end?" "To make sure you remember that they're still people." For a heartbeat, silence. Then he said, "You get 1 hour. After that we leave, no matter what happens." They drove in silence through slick streets until the cafe appeared. A small corner place half-lit against the drizzle. From the car across the street, Alyssa could see Marcus through the window. Thinner, jittery, eyes scanning the darkness. A cheap ball cap couldn't hide the fear carved into his features. "He's alone," she whispered. "For now." Alessandro adjusted the earpiece in his right ear. "Stay here." But Alyssa's hand shot out, gripping his sleeve. Please, let me talk first. He studied her for a long moment. Then, against every rule he lived by, he nodded. 1 minute, my men will cover you. The bell over the cafe door chimed softly. Marcus's head jerked up, disbelief flooding his face. Alyssa! She slid into the seat opposite him, heart hammering. What do you want, Marcus? You have to leave that house. He's lying to you. About what? He's not protecting you. He's protecting himself. That flash drive, what I took, it doesn't just hold business data. It holds names, politicians, cops, people he owns. She stared at him. You stole evidence. I stole insurance. And risked our daughter's life for it. His hands shook as he leaned closer. I did it for her. For both of you. You think he's some savior? He kills anyone who threatens him. Then why aren't you dead? Marcus flinched. Because he needs that drive back. And because I told him something he didn't expect. What? That Nia might not be mine. Alyssa froze. What did you say? He smiled weakly. Think about it, Alyssa. You dated him before you met me. You think he never checked? The floor seemed to drop from under her. You're lying. I wish I was. Through the window, a flash of headlights cut the darkness. Black cars again. Alessandro's men moving in. Marcus's eyes went wide. He's here! She turned to the door, and Alessandro was standing there, rain dripping from his coat, eyes locked on Marcus like a gun already drawn. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The air between them crackled with something ancient and final. Is it true? Alyssa whispered. What he said about the drive. Yes? And about Nia? Alessandro's gaze flicked to her, softer now. No. Marcus barked a laugh. He doesn't even deny it properly. The guards closed in. Alessandro spoke quietly. You should have stayed gone, Henderson. Kill me and you'll never find the backup, Marcus hissed. Then you'd better start talking fast. Alyssa stepped between them. Stop! Enough! Her voice cracked with exhaustion and fury. You're both using the same child to stay alive. You're monsters, both of you. Alessandro's eyes met hers. Maybe, but only one of us is trying to keep her breathing tonight. The rain outside turned violent, hammering the glass as Marcus's shoulders sagged in defeat. He reached into his jacket, slowly, and placed a small flash drive on the table. There, everything. Take it. Alessandro picked it up, sliding it into his pocket. You just bought yourself a heartbeat more of mercy. As the guards moved to take Marcus away, he shouted after them, You'll never be safe with him, Alyssa. Never! The door slammed. The cafe fell silent except for the storm. Alyssa turned to Alessandro. Was any of this about saving us? Or was I just another piece on your board? He looked at her, rain running down his jaw, voice low. It started that way. It isn't anymore. And in that moment, amid the wreckage of truth and betrayal, Alyssa realized the most dangerous thing in the room wasn't the flash drive, or Marcus, or even the men outside. It was the way her pulse raced when Alessandro said her name. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. It binds you to the one person you swore you'd never need. If the person who saved your life was also the reason it fell apart, could you forgive them? The rain didn't stop that night. It came down in relentless sheets, smearing the streetlights into blurs of gold and silver as the convoy wound its way back to the estate. Alyssa sat stiffly in the back seat, arms wrapped around herself, eyes locked on the window. Beside her, Alessandro said nothing. His jaw was tight, his gaze unreadable. Nia was asleep at home with Rosa, safe in that vast mansion Alyssa no longer trusted. You should have stayed in the car, Alessandro said quietly. You should have told me the truth, she shot back. He glanced at her then, brief, sharp. About what? About everything. The flash drive, the Russians, Marcus, and whatever the hell he meant about Nia. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. I already told you. That part was a lie. Was it? Alyssa demanded, because he seemed pretty sure. And you, she broke off, shaking her head. You didn't even flinch when he said it. I've learned to control my reactions. Maybe you've learned to control everything. That silenced them both. The hum of the engine filled the void, steady and mechanical, the only heartbeat in a car full of ghosts. When they reached the gate, Alessandro gave a curt nod to the guard. The iron doors opened like jaws, swallowing them whole. The car rolled to a stop under the portico. Alessandro stepped out, rain slicking his hair back. Alyssa followed, trembling from adrenaline more than cold. He turned toward her. "You're safe now." She let out a bitter laugh. "Safe? In your cage? This isn't a cage. Then why do I feel like I can't breathe here?" Something flickered across his face, a flash of regret, quickly buried. "Because you're used to chaos. Safety feels like confinement to people who've been hurt." "Don't psychoanalyze me, Alessandro," her voice cracked. "You don't know me." "I know you'd risk your life for that child," he said quietly. "And I know what that kind of love costs." He started to walk past her, but she caught his sleeve. "Tell me something. Do you ever stop pretending to be in control?" He turned his head slightly, eyes catching hers in the dim light. "Only when I'm looking at you." The words hit like a strike, unexpected, raw, disarming. Before she could answer, he pulled away and disappeared into the corridor, leaving her standing in the rain with nothing but the echo of her own pulse. Later that night, Alyssa sat on the floor beside Nia's bed, her back pressed against the wall. The little girl slept peacefully, clutching her stuffed rabbit. The house was too quiet. Every tick of the clock sounded like a countdown. Her phone sat beside her on the carpet, Marcus's last words replaying in her mind. "You'll never be safe with him." She opened the messaging app. The last message from Marcus glared up at her, unread, unreplyable. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then she deleted the thread entirely. It didn't make her feel lighter, just emptier. She glanced toward the window. The garden glimmered faintly under floodlights. Guards paced the perimeter, their shadows long and watchful. She wondered how many people had been kept safe here, and how many had never left. Downstairs, Alessandro stood alone in his office. The flash drive sat on the desk beside a half-empty glass of whiskey. His reflection in the window looked like a man haunted by choices that never ended well. He turned the drive over in his fingers. Inside it were secrets worth fortunes, names that could topple governments, and the one thing he hadn't expected, a file labeled A. Monroe. Curiosity tightened in his chest. He clicked it open. A video file. Alyssa's voice filled the room, shaky, recorded on an old phone camera. "If you're seeing this, it means Marcus found me again. I'm tired of running. I just want Nia to be okay." She was crying in the recording, sitting on the floor of what looked like her old apartment. "I told him I didn't care what he'd done. I just wanted peace. But he said there's no peace when you steal from devils." The video ended. Alessandro stared at the screen, his throat tight. He poured the rest of the whiskey down the sink. The next morning, Alyssa found him in the garden, sleeves rolled up, talking quietly to Rosa about travel plans. When he saw her, he dismissed the housekeeper with a nod. "You're leaving," she said flatly. "So are you." Her pulse quickened. "What?" "I'm sending you and Naya out of the country. New identities. Somewhere no one can find you." Alyssa blinked. "Why?" "Because Marcus's death will start a war, and I won't have you caught in it." "Marcus is dead?" His silence was answer enough. She took a step back, nausea rising. "You promised." "I promised to keep you safe, not to keep him alive." Her hands trembled. "You used me. I protected you. You owned me." He flinched, barely perceptible. "You think I wanted this?" "I think you don't know how to want anything you can't control." He stepped closer, voice low. "You have no idea what I've done to keep your name off the lists in that drive. You're alive because of me." "I'm trapped because of you!" Their voices echoed off the marble walls. Then, silence. He looked at her for a long, aching moment, eyes softer now, almost human. "I'll have Rosa prepare your papers. You leave tomorrow night." She wanted to scream, to hit him, to do something, but all that came out was a whisper. "You're doing this because you care, or because you can't stand to lose control?" "Maybe both," he said. "Maybe that's the same thing." He walked away before she could answer. That night, Alyssa couldn't bring herself to pack. She sat by the window again, the moonlight pale on her skin. For the first time since this began, she let herself cry. Silently. Bitterly. Not because she was afraid, but because she finally understood something cruel and simple. Freedom and safety don't always live in the same house. Sometimes the hardest choices aren't between right and wrong, but between what breaks your heart now and what saves it later. If you had to choose between the man who saved your life and the life you built without him, which would you walk away from? Alyssa wiped her tears and looked at Nia's small sleeping form. The answer, she thought, was simple. She would walk away from both if it meant her daughter could run free. But the night still had one more surprise waiting. Because just before dawn, as the first light touched the garden, a low explosion thundered in the distance, followed by the sharp, unmistakable crack of gunfire. The blast ripped through the quiet morning like the roar of an angry god. The windows trembled. A shockwave rattled the picture frames. Alyssa bolted upright, heart hammering, smoke, sirens, distant shouting. She grabbed Nia before the little girl even finished crying. "It's okay, baby, I've got you," she whispered, though her voice shook. Outside the door, footsteps thundered. Rosa's panicked voice in Italian. "Stay here! Don't open!" Then another explosion. Closer this time. The lights flickered, plunging the room into strobing darkness. Alyssa didn't think. She ran to the wardrobe, shoved aside the coats, and pulled a loose panel she'd noticed days ago. Behind it, a narrow service passage. She crouched, pushing Nia inside first. "Stay quiet, sweetheart." "Cover your ears." The child obeyed without question. Alyssa hesitated, one hand on the edge of the panel. Then she heard him. "Alyssa!" Alessandro's voice, rough, desperate, echoing down the hall. She froze. "Stay where you are!" he shouted again, closer now. "They're inside the gate!" Gunfire cracked somewhere below. Alyssa's instincts split in two. The mother in her wanted to stay hidden. The woman he'd forced to be brave wanted to run toward that voice. She pushed Nia deeper into the passage and whispered, "Don't move until Mommy comes back." Then she grabbed the small pistol Alessandro had insisted she keep in the nightstand and stepped into the hallway. The house was chaos. Smoke hung thick in the air. One of the chandeliers had shattered, scattering crystals across the marble floor. Alyssa moved low, heart pounding, guided by shouts and the smell of gunpowder. When she reached the main foyer, two men in dark coats were forcing their way through the broken front door. Strangers, not Alessandro's men. Her breath caught. Russians. The one in front raised his weapon. Alyssa fired first. The sound was deafening in the confined space. The man dropped, clutching his shoulder. His partner turned toward her, but before he could shoot, a burst of bullets tore through the air from the staircase. Alessandro. He moved like controlled fire, precise, ruthless. Within seconds, both intruders were down. Then he saw her. "What are you doing out here?" "You said stay alive, I'm doing that," she snapped. Something like pride flickered in his eyes before he grabbed her hand. "Come on." He pulled her through the smoke toward a hidden corridor behind the wine cellar. "They breached the east wall," he said between breaths. "They're after the drive. You should have destroyed it. And let them control the rest of the city? I don't care about your city, Alessandro. I care about my child." He stopped short. "So do I." The way he said it, fierce, guttural, silenced her for a moment. Then another blast shook the house, dust raining from the ceiling. Alessandro shoved open a steel door at the end of the corridor. Inside was a narrow stairway leading down. "Basement tunnel. It connects to the stables. Go, now." She shook her head. "Not without Nia. Rosa took her." "How do you know?" "Because I told her to." He caught her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. You can't help if you're dead." "Neither can you," she whispered. For a moment, the chaos outside faded. The air between them pulsed with something raw and real. Fear, longing, the shared understanding that this might be their last conversation. Then she kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was frantic, desperate. A collision of everything unsaid between them. When they broke apart, Alessandro's hand lingered against her cheek. "Go," he said hoarsely. "Find Rosa. Get your daughter out." She hesitated, eyes burning. "You come after us." "I'll try." She knew he wouldn't promise more than that. The tunnel was cold and narrow, lit only by emergency lights. Alyssa ran, her bare feet slapping against the concrete. The walls echoed with distant gunfire. She reached the stables just as Rosa appeared, carrying Nia wrapped in a blanket. Relief flooded Alyssa so violently her knees went weak. "Thank God," she breathed, pulling them both into an embrace. but Rosa's face was grim. We must move quickly. They are coming. Alyssa looked toward the far end of the tunnel where faint light glowed. An exit. Go! I'll cover you! No, child, Rosa said, placing a trembling hand on her cheek. You carry her. You're the future now. Alyssa shook her head, tears spilling. I don't understand. You will, Rosa whispered. Go! She turned back toward the gunfire as Alyssa ran. When they reached the exit, Nia stirred. Mommy? Almost there, baby, she panted, clutching her close. Almost there. They burst into the open air behind the estate. Smoke billowed above the main house, flames licking the sky. Rosa! Alyssa shouted back into the tunnel, but no answer came. Only silence and the faint echo of gunfire fading away. 10 minutes later, headlights appeared on the dirt road ahead. A familiar voice called out, Ms. Monroe! Anton, Alessandro's right-hand man, jumped from the vehicle. Come, quickly! Alyssa hesitated. Where's Alessandro? He looked away. Still inside? Her heart clenched. Then we go back. It's suicide, Anton said. He ordered me to get you out. Alyssa looked down at Nia, terrified but silent, clutching the rabbit. Then back at the burning mansion. Drive me to the front gate, she said quietly. Anton frowned. No. Then I'll walk. Her tone left no room for argument. With a muttered curse, he opened the door. They arrived as dawn broke over the smoldering ruins. The fire had eaten through the eastern wing. Smoke curled into the gray morning sky. Alyssa jumped out before the car stopped moving. Alessandro! She screamed. Alessandro! Through the haze, a figure emerged, soot-streaked, limping, but alive. He was carrying Rosa. Alyssa ran to meet him, tears blurring her vision. Oh my God! She's gone! Alessandro rasped. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he lowered the woman gently to the ground. Rosa's eyes were open, calm even in death. Alyssa sank beside her, sobbing. Alessandro knelt too, his hand finding hers. She stayed behind so you could live. She shouldn't have had to. She knew what she was protecting. He looked at Nia then, small, trembling, clutching the rabbit. Her future. Hours later, as emergency sirens wailed in the distance, Alyssa sat wrapped in a blanket beside Alessandro's car. He stood a few feet away, silent, watching the flames consume the last of his empire. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. Everything I built was supposed to keep me untouchable. Turns out, all it did was make me easier to aim at. Alyssa looked at him, eyes red. Maybe it's time to stop building walls and start building something human. He gave a hollow laugh. And what would that be? Whatever comes after survival, she said. For a long moment, he just looked at her. The woman who'd stumbled into his world by mistake and somehow torn it open from the inside. Then quietly, you could leave now. No one would stop you. She studied him, then said softly, I'm not leaving you to die standing in your own fire. Sometimes strength isn't found in running away from the flames, but in walking through them with someone who finally makes you want to survive. When everything burns down to ash, what would you try to save? The life you planned or the one you never expected? The fire had died to embers by the time Alessandro's remaining men secured the grounds. The estate looked like a wounded animal, walls scorched, windows shattered, the smell of smoke and loss hanging thick in the air. Alyssa sat with Nia inside one of the black SUVs, wrapped in Rosa's old shawl. The child's head rested in her lap, breathing even now. Every so often, Alyssa brushed ash from her daughter's curls, as if that small motion could keep the world steady. Alessandro stood apart, his phone pressed to his ear. Yes, he said quietly in Italian. It was Orlov. No, I won't run. He hung up, then turned toward the car. They're coming, he told her. The Russians want the drive. And they'll come for it today. Alyssa's throat tightened. Then we need to leave. They'll never stop hunting you if they think you have it. The only way this ends is if they know the game is over. She shook her head. You can't fight all of them. I don't intend to, he said. I intend to end it. By afternoon, they reached the old docks on the edge of the city, a place of rusted cranes and forgotten warehouses. Rain blew sideways off the gray water. "This is where it started," Alessandro said as he pulled the SUV to a stop. "The first shipment Marcus diverted came through here." He handed Alyssa a small flash drive identical to the one Marcus had surrendered. "Decoy," he explained. "The real one's hidden. If they take this, they'll think they've won. And if they don't believe you, then we don't get a second chance." He looked at her, the steel in his gaze tempered by something gentler. "Stay in the car until I tell you to move." "No, Alyssa, I'm not hiding while you walk into another fire." Before he could answer, Nia's small voice piped from the back seat. "Mommy?" Alyssa turned. "Stay down, baby. I'm scared." "I know," she whispered, kissing her forehead. "I'm scared, too." When she looked up again, Alessandro had already stepped into the rain. Men emerged from the shadows. 5, maybe 6. Faces hard, weapons visible beneath coats. The one in front was tall and pale, his smile thin as wire. "Castelli," he called. "You look smaller in person." "Orloff," Alessandro replied evenly. "Let's finish this. Give me the drive and perhaps I'll let your pretty houseguest live. She's not yours to threaten." Orlov's smile widened. "Everyone is someone's to threaten." He nodded once. 2 men advanced. Alyssa's breath caught. She couldn't see Alessandro's weapon, but the crack of a single shot cut through the rain. One man fell. Another lunged forward, gun raised, only to drop when Alessandro's second bullet found its mark. Chaos erupted. Alyssa threw open the car door, clutching the pistol he'd given her earlier. "Stay down!" she shouted to Nia, then ran toward the warehouse. She reached the open doorway just as Alessandro ducked behind a concrete pillar. Gunfire shredded the wall beside him. He looked up, startled. "I told you to stay." "Too bad," she hissed, sliding beside him. "You need another set of eyes." A grin ghosted across his lips despite the danger. "Remind me never to underestimate you again." "Good plan." They moved together through the smoke-filled interior, covering each other in short bursts of fire and motion. Years of fear sharpened into focus inside Alyssa. She wasn't just running anymore, she was fighting. From the mezzanine above, Orlov's voice echoed, "You think this ends with bullets? You still don't understand what Marcus stole," Alessandro shouted back. "Enlighten me." "It wasn't money. It was blackmail. Names, accounts, leverage. Without it, you're finished." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Then I suppose we both lose." He stepped from cover, firing upward. The impact sent Orlov stumbling backward. The railing gave way with a screech and the man fell hard onto the concrete below. The room went silent except for the rain pounding the roof. Alyssa lowered her weapon slowly. "Is it over?" Alessandro looked around, breath ragged. "Almost." He approached Orlov's motionless form, picked up the fallen pistol and tossed it aside. The decoy drive lay beside it. He crushed it under his boot. Then he turned to Alyssa. "Now it's over." Outside, sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Approaching, but not fast enough to matter. The rain had eased to a drizzle. Nia peeked from the car window, eyes wide as her mother and Alessandro emerged from the warehouse, soaked and shaking, but alive. Alyssa lifted her daughter into her arms. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're safe." Nia's little fingers brushed her mother's cheek. "Did the bad men go away?" Alyssa nodded. "They did." Alessandro stood beside them, watching the child with a look she'd never seen before. Something close to awe. "You did well," he murmured. Alyssa met his gaze. "So did you." For the first time, he seemed uncertain what to do with silence. She asked quietly, "What happens now?" "I turn myself in." Her eyes widened. "What?" "There's no empire left to protect. The only way to keep you and her safe is to burn what's left of me." She shook her head. "You don't have to do that." "Yes, I do. Someone has to stop the circle before it starts again." He glanced toward the water. "I spent half my life trying to be untouchable, the other half running from what I became. And now? Now I stop running." He looked at her then, really looked, past the exhaustion and fear, into the woman who had accidentally texted his name and somehow rewritten his story. "Take her and go," he said softly. "There's a boat at the pier. Anton will help you disappear. She stepped closer, rain dripping from her hair. You can come with us. He smiled faintly. If I do, they'll never stop looking. But if I stay, they'll stop believing you mattered to me. Alyssa's voice broke. And do I? His answer was immediate. More than anything. He touched her face once, gentle, reverent, then pressed something into her palm. Rosa's silver cross, tarnished but whole. For luck, he said. For goodbye, she whispered. Then she kissed him one last time before turning toward the waiting boat. She didn't look back until the shoreline was a blur through the rain. Alessandro stood where she'd left him, surrounded by approaching sirens, a ghost choosing his own ending. Some stories don't end with victory or defeat, but with surrender, the kind that sets you free. If the person who saved your life had to destroy their own to keep you safe, would you let them? The sea was calm at dawn, glass smooth and silver. Alyssa sat at the bow of the small boat, Nia curled against her chest beneath Rosa's shawl. Behind them the coastline shrank into mist, the city reduced to a faint bruise on the horizon. For the first time in weeks, no one was chasing them. Only gulls and wind and the steady rhythm of the engine. "Mommy," Nia mumbled, still half asleep. "Is Mr. Alessandro coming?" Alyssa tightened her arms around her daughter. "He has to stay and fix some things, baby." "Then he'll come later?" The question hollowed her chest. "Maybe not right away," she whispered, "but he'll know where to find us." Nia accepted that with the easy faith of childhood and drifted back to sleep. Alyssa turned her face into the salt breeze, eyes burning. The air tasted of freedom and heartbreak, indistinguishable. Really. 3 months later, a small coastal town in Portugal. The cafe smelled of espresso and warm bread. Alyssa wiped flour from her apron, smiling as Nia, now with sun-freckled cheeks, helped an elderly fisherman count change at the counter. Every day began the same: sunrise over the cliffs, coffee deliveries, the small laughter of normal life. And every night ended with the same thought. He kept his word. The papers had called it the Castelli collapse. Police raids, seizures, disappearances. No one knew what became of Alessandro himself. Some said he'd cut a deal, others that he'd vanished into the sea. Alyssa stopped reading after the first week, because the truth she carried was quieter. She was still alive. That had to mean something. One rainy afternoon, she closed the cafe early. Nia sat at a corner table, coloring. The wind pushed at the windows. Thunder rolled far out at sea. When Alyssa gathered the day's mail, an unfamiliar envelope lay on top. No return address, only her name written in careful, slanted handwriting she knew by heart. Her breath caught. She looked toward Nia, then back at the envelope. The wax seal was stamped with a small silver cross. Hands shaking, she broke it open. Inside was a single page. "Alyssa, if you're reading this, then the sea has done its job and carried this safely to you. The world believes Alessandro Castelli is dead. Let it. I wanted you and Nia to live without looking over your shoulder. The drive is gone, the debts are paid in ways that don't need explaining. I'm somewhere quiet, no name, no power, no guns. For the first time in my life, I sleep. When you told me safety and freedom don't live in the same house, you were right. But I think they live on the same road. If I ever find the courage to walk that road again, I'll come looking for you. Until then, teach her to love simple mornings, not iron gates." Alyssa pressed the letter to her chest, tears mixing with rain seeping through the open window. For a long time she said nothing. Then she looked at Nia and smiled. "Hey, Peanut," she said softly. "Want to go for a walk?" The little girl grinned. "In the rain?" "Yeah," Alyssa said, pulling on her coat. "In the rain." They stepped outside. The streets glistened, reflections of yellow light pooling in the puddles. Nia jumped in one, laughing. Alyssa laughed too, the sound light, unguarded, almost foreign to her own ears. Somewhere beyond the cliffs, a single boat moved through the fog, its engine low and steady. She couldn't see who was aboard, but she didn't need to. The knowledge that he might still be alive was enough. Later that evening, she hung Rosa's silver cross above the cafe door. Customers would rub it for luck without ever knowing whose hands had last held it. Alyssa stood on the threshold, the night breeze lifting her hair, and whispered a quiet thank you to the woman who'd saved them, to the man who'd burned his world to keep them safe, and to the version of herself who'd finally stopped running. Weeks turned into months. Tourists came and went. Life, somehow, became ordinary again. Then one morning, while Nia chased gulls on the beach, Alyssa noticed a figure walking along the shore. Tall coat collar turned up against the wind. For a heartbeat, her pulse faltered. The gait, the shoulders. It could have been him. But when she blinked, he was gone, swallowed by the sea mist. Alyssa smiled to herself. Maybe ghosts weren't meant to stay gone forever. She lifted Nia into her arms and pointed toward the horizon. See that? The ocean? Yeah, that's what freedom looks like. The tide rolled in, erasing their footprints. Alyssa took one last look at the endless water and felt no fear, only gratitude. Everything that had once hunted her had burned away, leaving something fiercer than survival. Peace. She whispered, "Thank you, Alessandro," and meant it. Then she turned back toward the little cafe where laughter waited, the small life she'd chosen over every empire. Because sometimes victory isn't about winning the war, it's about finding the courage to start living once the war is over. Some love stories don't end, they echo. If a single mistake led you to the person who changed your life, would you still call it a mistake? Let's talk. Do you think Alyssa should have waited for Alessandro? Or was she right to start over? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for the next story. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.